Hi everyone, this is Group 17 and we have done a case study on the European Union Climate Control Project. I'm Matt Kim Hong and I will give you a brief introduction about the project. Scientists have issued a warning that unless immediate action is taken, the global temperature will exceed 2 degrees Celsius above the pre-industrial level by 2060. This enhanced global warming will give a negative impact on the environment, resulting in irreversible changes to many ecosystems and a deterioration of biodiversity. In the year of 2000, the European Commission, which is one of the 7 major decision-making bodies of the EU, established the EU Climate Control Project to respond to this global problem. The objective of the European Union climate control can be listed here. The primary goal of the project was to identify the most cost-effective and environmentally friendly policies and measures that could be implemented at the EU level to aid the reduction of greenhouse gas emission. Every economic division and society including those in charge of energy, transportation, agriculture, and construction must play a role. When it comes to the scope of the project, it has 3 components. The first one is EU ETS, which is a framework for the EU's climate change policy, with the primary goal of reducing greenhouse gas emission in a cost-effective manner. It has proven to be an effective tool for reducing greenhouse gas emissions. The second one is the Montreal Protocol, which is an international treaty aiming to protect the ozone layer by regulating the production and trade of ozone-depleting substances. Meanwhile, the European Union has signed onto the Paris Agreement and the Kyoto Protocol. There are 2 short-term goals. The target for 2020 would be to reduce the greenhouse gas emission by at least 20% compared to the 1990s. Furthermore, 20% of energy produced in the EU region should come from the renewable sources, with 20% increase in energy efficiency. In 2030, greenhouse gas emissions should be cut by at least 40% compared to the 1990s. 32% of energy should come from the renewables, and 35% of energy efficiency should be increased. Long-term goals would include achieving climate neutrality by 2050. Climate neutral means that there are no net greenhouse gas emission. Despite the fact that the climate control program has many benefits, the there will always be some drawbacks. The focus would be put on the resource allocation. The EU climate control program is a massive project that will require a massive amount of money or capital to achieve its objectives. The European Union's budget is primarily concerned with investment. Instead of duplicating national budget allocations, an emphasis is placed on the provision of resources for a specific EU-wide goal.
Good morning, everyone. I am Ken Kinwai. I will present the organization structure of European Union Climate Control Project. On a global scale, different stakeholders are involved in the European Union Climate Control Project. Different stakeholder expectations will have an impact on the project plan. It is primarily divided into three stakeholders: non-governmental organizations, political parties, and European Union member countries. Focusing on the EU scale, the Climate Action Department reports directly to the European Commission, which is the European Union executive body. The European Council provides general guidance to the European Commission, while the European Parliament supervises and sets the European Commission budget. Other EU agencies collaborate with the Climate Action Department as well. The Executive Agency for Small and Medium Enterprises, for example, finance some aspect of the Climate Action Programme, while the European Environment Agency collaborates with Climate Action on environmental policy. Only in extreme case will the European Crown act as a judiciary to determine whether the policy outlined by EU climate action are legal or not. Many innovative climate action programs will be funded by the European Investment Bank. Although climate action is the primary department in charge of carrying out the climate control program, EU member states are left to act on their own to meet the target or adhere to the policy established by climate action. It is worth noting that some EU member states are not supporting to climate control program and are acting as a roadblock rather than facilitator. Poland, for example, is Europe's second-largest carbon source. The country will not participate in the climate action program. For key members of this project, European Commission, European Parliament, European Climate Action Department, and European Council are the key members. For the project management structure, the EU Climate Action Department is led by a Director General who oversees the three major groups, each of which have several working groups. The structure is clearly divided into three sections. Group A is in charge of international relations, mainstreaming, and policy coordination. B and C are in charge of developing policy for the major source of pollution, with Group B focusing on pollution in the trading sector and developing a new emission trading system, and Group C focusing on non-trading areas such as road transport.
I'm Huang Kit, and I'm going to talk about the project plan. EU has set up different policies to reach different goals. The first policy is greenhouse gas emission reduction. To develop a well-functioning EU carbon market, the ETS sectors, including power and heat generation sectors, will have to meet a target of 21% of reduction by 2020, 43% of reduction by 2030. And for non-ETS sectors, like agriculture, forestry, and land use, they have to meet a reduction of 10% by 2020 and a 30% of reduction of carbon dioxide in 2030 when compared to the 20 and 5 levels through the effort sharing regulations, land use change and forestry regulation. This is a long-term strategy for greenhouse gas emission reduction. The National Energies and Climate Plan like clean energy transition will be developed in order to reach a zero global greenhouse gas emission society by 2050. The second policy is funding for climate objectives. There will be a low carbon investment in climate actions, like 20% of the EU expenditure in 2014 to 2020, and at least spending 20%, 25% of the EU expenditure in the next multi-annual financial framework 2021 to 2027. The third policy is the carbon dioxide reduction from the passengers' cars, and cars are responsible for around 12% of the total EU emission of carbon dioxide, and the target will be 130 grams of carbon dioxide per kilometer between the 2015 and 2019, and by 2021 the target will become 95 gram carbon dioxide per kilogram, and manufacturer has to pay excess emission premium for each car exceeds the target. The fourth policy would be the hydrofluorocarbons reduction. There will be the functioning of the EU-wide quota system from 2015. The EU controls the amount and allocation of the HFC in market, and which is decreased by year, in order to reach a 45% reduction by 2020 and 79% of reduction by 2030. This is the project milestones. EU will review the project plan every year as it is a long-term continuous project, and member states could propose their policies and measures flexibly to meet the targets set by the EU. And EU has done different practical actions to reach the emission reduction. The first action would be the legislation. EU revised the ETS directive for 2021 to 2030. The cap would decline by 2.2% annually from 2021 onwards, which means an additional reduction of around 556 million tons of carbon dioxide when compared to the current annual decline of 1.74%. And the second action would be the revision of the ship monitoring, reporting, and verification (MRV) regulations, as maritime transport emits about 2.5% of the global greenhouse gas emissions. The EU will monitor, report, and verify the carbon dioxide emissions from large ships starting from 2018. There will be at least 50% of reduction of global greenhouse gas emission by 2050 compared to the 2009, according to the International Maritime Organization. The third action will be update of the adaptation strategies. The new EU strategy was adopted in 2021 to adapt to the unavoidable impacts of climate change and become climate resilient by 2050. Four principal objectives is applied in the adaptation strategies. They are smarter, swifter, and more systematic, and to set up an international action on adaptation to climate change in order to avoid loss, damage, and pollution. And the fourth actions will be complement of the carbon leakage list. The new list was adopted by the Commission in 2019 for the phase 4 of the emission trading system, which could safeguard the competitiveness of the industry covered by the ETS, which define the significant risk of the carbon leakage of different sectors and subsectors. And it will also provide higher free allowances to high-risk sectors. It is a schedule of the project. And now I will hand over to Li Ka-zhen.
Thank you. I will now talk about the budgets and cost funding of the European Union Climate Control Project. The EU Climate Action is supported by three main top-down budgets: the Modernization Fund, the LIFE Programme, and the EU members' budgets. The Modernization Fund is a dedicated funding program to support 10 lower-income EU member states. The program assists in their transition to climate neutrality by modernizing their energy systems, improving energy generation and efficiency. The Modernization Fund is funded from revenues from the auctioning of 2% of the total allowance for 2021 to 30 under the EU emissions trading system. From the table below, the total amount of allowance transferred was 643 million euros for the period from 2021 to 30. The details have also been listed in the table. The LIFE Climate Action Programme is the European Union's funding instrument for climate action. These programs assist businesses, non-governmental organizations, and government agencies in promoting the adoption of low carbon and adaptation technologies and new strategies. Also, by contributing to the shift towards a low carbon and climate resilient economy, it hopes to improve the development, implementation, and enforcement of EU climate change policy and legislation. During 2014 to 20, it has already funded around 864 million euros for climate action and 2,592 million euros for the environment. Other than the two funding above, the European Union also has its budget supporting climate change control. From 2014 to 20, the EU Commission has agreed to pay for around 20% of the EU climate-related spending to support research and innovation, cohesion policy, and natural resources. From the table below, the EU Commission's fund climate change aspects with 34 billion euros out of the total EU budget of 164 billion euros in 2020, with climate accounting for 21% of the total. According to these figures, the EU is on track to meet its 20% target by 2020. Members of the EU contribute to the EU's expenses. Each member has their budget and plans their monetary contribution separately. In climate action, there may be a misalignment of governance priorities between the EU and their countries. Member states may refuse to support climate action funding. Commitments have therefore been made. The actual payment, however, is usually less than the commitment. Some countries may choose to cut their budgets or leave EU, which affect the EU's income. Furthermore, countries' commitments are not exactly monetary values. They may commit to paying a certain percentage of income, and therefore, estimation is very challenging because income varies from year to year. Although the EU has set a target for spending at least 20% of its budget on climate protection, however, an unexpected event such as a global scale epidemic may force the EU to spend a significant amount of money. Climate change spend may need to be adjusted to provide adequate financial support for these uncertainties. Even though there are many difficulties and obstacles in supporting climate action, the EU Climate Control Project still wants to plan for the future environment. Therefore, they set several targets in short and long term. As I have mentioned before, in 2014 to 20, they plan to spend 20% of the total EU budget on climate action, and it has already been achieved. Then they set the target even higher. During 2021 to 27, they plan to spend at least 25% of the total EU budget on climate change projects. To meet the target set, the EU formulates rules and regulations to control the cost expenditure, which try to tackle the difficulties coming from the factors like contributions from the EU members and spending on uncertainties. I'm now passing the time to my partner, Clement.
Talk about risk management. First, the ETS system. It operates under a cap and trade principle. Basically forces company to release an amount of or less emission in a year. Otherwise, they will face heavy fines. That's why they will put themselves in a competitive disadvantage if they don't reduce their emission, or they have to buy allowance from other companies. Second, transportation emission in Europe is a quarter of the total emission. That's why we have to lower the transportation emission to have a better performance for the project. But drivers are less sensitive to the ETS price increases, and car companies like Volkswagen, they have faked the emission results. That's why we think that increasing the sales of zero emission vehicles through tax discount and increasing charging facilities will help to lower the total transportation emissions. So human resources. There are some glass ceiling effects that prevents women from advancing. So there are some talent development program to find some talented women that can advance to the management level, and in order to help the overall project. Secondly, is the rate, the lack of understanding and abilities. That's why we have to offer more learning and development sessions throughout the program. So in financially, we have some anti-fraud strategy throughout the project in order to reduce the risk of being fraud. Some anti-fraud measure like prevention detection. So the cost of the project is lower. In the political side of the program, we have to increase public awareness and support for the climate action in order to ensure our project is going smooth on the political side. We can update some climate information to Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For the environmental side, reduction on unnecessary consumption of energy by going paperless, using train instead of flight, sustainable energy, transition to more sustainable form of energy production, such as nuclear power and hydropower plants, and forestry management adoption to expand forest area to absorb carbon from the atmosphere. So to conclude this presentation, this project uses free system or protocol in order to reach the target to climate neutral in 2050s with the concerns like transition to emission-free time and budget allocation, and using top-down budget like the LIFE program and the yield budget, and minimize risk in areas like ETC, transportation, human resource, financial, political, environmental, and technical in order to create a climate neutral environment. And that's our presentation. Thank you.